Hi, my name is Megan Sell. I'm the owner and CEO of the Green Umbrella, and I was so excited to meet Anne. I met Anne through reading her book and reaching out to her and the age of autism. I have a huge passion to help families with children with a diagnosis on the spectrum. For a variety of reasons, I would like to share a little bit of my story and how I've gotten to the place where I am, being very passionate about helping in a situation of a diagnosis of autism. When I was in college, I was studying my master's in human development counseling, and I was getting training in ABA therapy, and I was working with a family that had a child diagnosed with autism, and he was pretty severe on the spectrum, struggled with a lot of symptoms, and his body was not able to detox. We found out that his body was actually not able to sweat. So when he'd go outside in the sun in Nashville, Tennessee, which is super hot, he would have complete meltdowns because his body was unable to sweat and detox in a normal way. So his mother was very she was doing a lot of holistic treatments. She was bringing him to the chiropractor. She was doing all organic. She had eliminated all household. She even told me not to wear perfumes when I would come. And this is when I was 20 years old. So I was pretty young and did not know a lot about holistic medicine. My experience with medicine I'd been diagnosed when I was 16 with PCOS, which is polycystic ovary syndrome, and I had cysts on my ovaries. I was told that I may not have children. I didn't have a cycle. The only thing that I was given was birth control. So I was told to go on birth control to regulate my cycle, and that's what I did. And for years I was on birth control and had a lot of fear surrounding children and wanting to have a family. And this was my first experience being exposed to other solutions, other issues related to health and the body. And it caused me to dig a lot deeper. I started to do my own research on nutrition and holistic medicine, and I started to see my own chiropractor. I started to really try to put the pieces of the puzzle together of why was my body diagnosed with PCOS? Why did I have cysts on my ovaries? It wasn't just a random error or something random. There had to be a reason, and I was very inquisitive about it. And when I moved to South Africa, my husband is South African, and when I moved to South Africa, I started to deal with things more on an emotional level, and I didn't realize how much toxic emotions can play into someone's health until I discovered that I had a guilt complex that I wasn't aware of. When I was put in a situation where a lot of people were in poverty and struggling with disease and AIDS, HIV/AIDS, I started struggling with guilt. I started to read a lot about a man named Joseph Prince, who's a minister in Singapore, and he shared about grace and being free from condemnation and guilt and certain things that I hadn't delved into a lot. So I started to read his sermons and learn more about his perspective. And I had an intense moment where I felt guilt. It was like a heavy weight come off of me. And the next day after I experienced that, I had a normal cycle for the first time in my life. And it was a huge turning point for me in my own life, but also in my professional life, because I realized that our health is more complicated than we realize. And that's what started my pursuit of starting the Green Umbrella, the company that I own now. And there was always the seed of my experience with a family that had a child on the spectrum. They were very close to my heart. I had become very close to the family. I'd become very emotionally invested and emotionally involved, and it never left me. And I think when I started my company, the Green Umbrella, I naturally gravitated towards autism and neurological conditions. And my studies started to surround a philosophy and approach to nutrition called GAPS, which is gut and psychology syndrome. Dr. Natasha Campbell is a European doctor, and she is the one that developed, she's the doctor that developed GAPS protocol. She actually had a child diagnosed with autism and started researching and learning more. And she also found this gut neurology connection. She found that her own child had major digestive issues, had issues detoxifying, and all these symptoms surrounding progressive brain damage and brain chemistry imbalances. And she found that as she addressed the leaky gut syndrome and reversing the issues with the gut integrity being compromised through toxicity, she also found the improvement in balancing brain chemistry and in brain health. And so I gravitated towards Dr. Natasha Campbell, towards GAPS. I started a lot of studying around that and working with families with, again, a decade later, I started families with children with autism. And it's amazing how it's come full circle. And I just love helping families in this situation with an autism diagnosis. It's very complicated, and there's a lot of emotions surrounding any diagnosis, whether someone is diagnosed with autism or cancer or diabetes. There's definitely a trauma and a grieving process that a family goes through in that situation. And I count it such a privilege to walk with families that are grieving and trying to find answers and trying to find ways to help restore their child. And I find that in my practice, there's many ways that my families and children benefit from making lifestyle changes and from understanding what are the deeper rooted issues and why are the symptoms expressing the way they are expressing in your child. And I think that I think it's important that we're not afraid of the questions and afraid of the answers we find, because I think that sometimes there's a fear surrounding digging too deep and finding things out that do cause complicated emotions. There can be a sense of betrayal, a sense of feeling lost or feeling unsupported. And I encourage my families to find the deeper-rooted answers to the questions. And I really enjoy this process with my clients. And I'll use one family as an example. My Krista I've been working with her family, and her child, Carter, was diagnosed with autism. And it was a situation where he was developing normally, and he did regress pretty suddenly. And I find it very valuable to listen to the story of the parent of the child, because their story, they tend to have pieces of the puzzle, and they tend to know certain things intuitively about what may be involved in the regression of the symptoms. And I remember sitting with Krista the first time we met together, and I remember her sharing her story of going to the doctor and being concerned. She had a gut instinct that Carter wasn't ready for this routine round of vaccinations. She had this feeling that his digestion was too fragile. He didn't have a normal stool. He didn't have normal digestion like his sister did. The pregnancies were pretty close together, so her body didn't have a lot of time to recover from her first pregnancy. There's a lot of things surrounding it, but she had a gut feeling, and she asked the doctor out of concern. She said, "Are you sure that he's going to be okay? I don't feel right about doing these many vaccines at the same time." is there any other options? And the doctor assured her that this was normal procedure, that everything was going to be okay. And she remembers pretty immediately after the vaccinations, her son regressing into autism through having screaming fits and fevers, and he did regress and become nonverbal. And she was very concerned, obviously, about what happened, and it was a very traumatic experience. And we've gone through a lot of changes at helping them make lifestyle changes, helping them implement principles from the GAPS diet, changing their diet, finding good sources of animal proteins, minimizing his toxic exposure, and supporting his body to be able to reverse the damage that has come from being overexposed to toxins. And I remember there's been several critical turning points. One critical turning point was when his brain did start to make the connections. And I remember seeing him several months after we started implementing some of the lifestyle changes and the dietary changes and supplements that we had added in. And I remember being so excited because he was, and he started to go up to every person to say hi. And you could tell he was so excited that he was able to say hi, because there had been a period of time that he couldn't do that he couldn't just go up and greet someone. And it was such a beautiful thing to see that, and to see his mom starting to have hope and feeling like, okay, this isn't going to keep progressing in a negative way. We can be proactive, and these solutions are helping. And that was one amazing memory that I remember. The second amazing memory I remember with this family in particular is when I went to their house and saw Carter for the first time playing by himself with a train set. And for a normal kid, this wouldn't be a milestone. This would be the norm. This would be a normal thing you'd see every day, them sitting and playing with the train set. But when I had first met Carter, we were at the park, and we were all together. His sister was playing, and we were engaging with her, and he ran off by himself to go to the baseball field and was sitting in the sand and making a circle over and over again. And to see him go from that experience to sitting, playing quietly by himself at the train set, making imaginary noises and interactions was amazing. It was incredible because he was starting to hit the right milestones and operate at a more normal level because his body was starting to detox. And then I would say the third milestone that I remember with this family that is something that I see and that I look forward to seeing with the families that I work with is that I knew there was a lot of trauma surrounding the diagnosis and the adverse events that Krista pointed towards the diagnosis. And we had a counseling session where we addressed the feelings she had of guilt, and she felt angry at herself, and she felt she was punishing herself, and she hadn't forgiven herself, and she hadn't released the situation fully. She was holding on to it, and it caused a lot of complicated emotions. And children are very sensitive. They pick up on the subtleties of our motives, our emotions, how we feel, I think better than we do. And the amazing thing that happened during that session is that Krista was able to forgive herself for the first time and really release that guilt. And we said a simple prayer, and she cried and released it all. And the biggest thing that we noticed afterwards is I saw her several weeks after, and she told me that at the same moment she forgave herself, her son, Carter, initiated going to the bathroom at school for the first time. He had never done that before. And potty training had been very difficult. And And it was amazing to see tangible progression in improvement based on her resolving the emotional trauma. She was able to resolve that, and her child miles away at school felt that shift. He felt the shift happen. And she also has been able to transition off antidepressants. She had gone on antidepressants after the diagnosis because it was a very challenging situation, and she's been improving, and it's been amazing to see the transformation in that family. And I would say that it's very important for the parents of children that have a diagnosis on the spectrum to listen to your intuition, to not make decisions in fear, and to find a place where you can have that hope that things can improve and that you don't have to expect things to continue to spiral down and get worse. And I also encourage parents to not get to a place where you embrace everything about the diagnosis. Because if you do get to a place of embracing everything, and don't believe that your child can improve, then you may not be as proactive. The toxic burden load and things that can help the symptoms, help his or her body detox or regain gut integrity. There's a lot of solutions out there. And I think that that's one thing that I learned with my story as well with PCOS. I learned that it started with me believing that there was another solution, believing that there were answers to my health crisis, and that's what led me down the path to find the answers. And if I never believed that there was another path for me to heal, I don't think I would be at the place where I am, getting ready to plan a pregnancy, have children. I wouldn't be where I am today with my health and where I am with my family. And so I just want to encourage everyone that there is hope, and we can be proactive, and we do have choices.